G'day everybody, it's Mike, hope you're well, and here we are, a good update. I just had the car another dyno run with all the mods on now, so the header, exhaust, tune, intake, which is a carbon elbow, which I don't think gives much horsepower at all, but it does help with heat, and the drop-in Japanese Toyota high performance air filter. So that's it. We started off back in December last year with the first ever dyno run that this car had, and it was factory stock, no modifications at all, and it was pretty disappointing. I expected a lot more, and it was, yeah, and also the dyno, it reads low, so that was also disheartening. But the thing is, with all the tests I've done the same dyno each time now, and also around about the same time of the day. All these have been run in summer, so the temperature for each run was actually within 5 degrees, so between sort of 20-25 degrees, and humidity pretty similar, like 60 to 70% humidity, maybe 80%. So not ideal conditions, but fairly consistent. Anyway, the first run, this is the actual first ever run that the car had. I haven't actually shown this one, and it was like, give it a run, and it went up to 297, and I thought, oh, that's disheartening, because it was so close to 300. But the car, we ran it again. I think we had about 2 or 3 runs that day. Ran it again, and it peaked out at just over 300 at 302.5 horsepower at the wheels, and it's a Dyno Dynamics. They are known as a heartbreaker dyno. They do read lower by about 12%, 13% than a Dyno Jet, but we're looking at before and after on the same dyno, so percentages are about the same. So that's not a problem. So here we are, around 302 horsepower, and something I didn't realise was how rich it was. That's the tractive effort, so that one's Newton meters. Now this one, which is tractive effort, is 306.9 horsepower. This is after the tune, and again, not that impressed, because we picked up 4 horsepower, and the car was running like a dog. I can see the run note down the bottom, it was very rich, and I'll show you now. If some of you know about LAMDA, which is the air fuel mixture, the perfect stoichiometric is 14.7 to 1 for petrol. So this thing ran right down to 0.74, something like that, and that is 10.8 to 1, which is super rich. What I did not know is that the mass airflow sensor was faulty, and that was what was causing it to run as it was. Would it make a lot more horsepower? Probably not a whole lot more, maybe around about the 310, 315, something like that. But as you can see here, the green is the first ever run, and after the tune it richened it up, and it just dipped down even worse, and it cost horsepower. There's no doubt about that. So that was the, when was that? 22nd of the 12th. So that was later in the month, and we come all the way to now, and here's the number I'm really happy with. So remember, the first ever run was 297 horsepower, and boom, 352 or 353. Car ran really well on the dyno. Actually, it had a couple of little dramas. It climbed up out of the dyno so one of the straps came loose, and it was sort of like sideways and up on the rollers, and I thought, oh, that's pretty ordinary. I didn't want to see my car hop off the dyno. but they put it back on the dyno, strapped it down, and this was the number that we ended up with. The first run was about 347 horsepower, and it's normal for a car. If you run it a couple of times, it'll actually make a little bit more until it gets heat soaked, and then it'll drop back down. So this was the second of about 4 runs, and this was the highest number. So actually we did 8 runs, but some of those runs were the car hopping off the dyno. So this was the best of 8 runs, and I'm really happy with it. It made good power. So the headers and exhaust, we're looking at over 46 horsepower gain from when the car was last on the dyno. That's significant. that's pretty well up there. There's not much more I can do to this car, but we might be able to do some little bits just to help it breathe a bit better, but that's about it. Here's a comparison, and so the green is the tune and no other mods. So the tune, a drop-in filter, our carbon elbow, which does nothing except a little bit of heat soak, helps the heat, doesn't gain horsepower at all. So from just putting the exhaust on and also replacing the mass airflow meter, we picked up a solid 46 horsepower. Now we've run into another problem with this thing, and it is that the stock air filter box and the stock diameter of the tube going into the engine is a restriction. So from about 6,000 upwards, the car is actually restricted on the inlet side. So the next thing will be an RR Racing 87mm mass air intake with a very large K&N filter and a special box to stop the heat, all that sort of stuff. So that's coming, but they're expensive little buggers. They're about $1,000 Australian, but they are worth about 12 horsepower, 15 horsepower. After that, I will be also doing the inlet manifold port and polish. That's worth another 10 horsepower, 12 horsepower. So there's still another 20 plus horsepower in this thing on the inlet side. Then that's it. There's no more. One other thing I may do is where the exhaust joins the rear mufflers, they're V-bands. So I might run the car without the rear mufflers. Just curious to see if there's any difference there, but that will be later in the year. I will do that. But here's the difference. So there's quite a large torque difference. Like say here you got 260 up to 322. That's significant, and that's from fairly low RPM. I think we started here at about 2500. This is 7,200 where it hits the rev limiter. So most runs were done at about 2500 RPM, maybe a little bit less, and it just climbs up. And it's a lot smoother, the curve, where the other one was a bit dippy in places where it got rich, where if I can go back to here, see how it dipped down to 0.74. I haven't got the other one. I've seen it, but I should have got him to send it to me, but it dips down to about 0.88, 0.86, and then it gets to around about 0.84, and that's way better. So it still comes rich, but it's much more gradual, sensible richness, which is really good. So yeah, there's a before and after. So that's pretty good. Very happy with that. The next image is comparing it to the IS350. Same dyno I ran the IS50 on, so, and similar time of the day. I think this was done at 9:06, and as you can see, the 350 made good power on this dyno, 258, but now that the ISF is running well, there's not quite 100 horsepower difference, but pretty close, which makes sense because the Australian IS350 was rated at 316 horsepower and the ISF was 416 horsepower, and the mods actually move them up together, so they maintain about 100 horsepower difference, and that's probably where we are. Pretty happy with that. So the journey begins. The next run at the drag strip is the 5th, which is this Saturday, and as rain predicted, of course. We have had record rain over the last week or so here in Queensland, and it's moved down into New South Wales, and there's major record floods. It's really bad. There's a lot of things gone, as far as people have lost their lives, property lost, animals lost, just the list goes on and on and on. So in the light of that, the drag racing is not that important. However, once it's all sorted out and the cleanup, which is happening now, once that's done, everyone will get back to doing their normal day-to-day stuff, and we'll go out and play on the racetrack and try to get past all this really negative crap with all the COVID and all the floods and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, looking forward to sharing the next runs on the dyno. If it's not this weekend, we have a meeting every week this month, including a 1/8 mile competition, so I might enter that as well. But yeah, the car's going to get a fair bit of running this month, and next month they've got some big competitions, so that may be a time to remove the inlet manifold and do a port and polish on that, and we'll see how we go. Anyway, thank you for watching, and please like, subscribe and share and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, let's see if we can get this thing down into the 1210s or 1220s. 11 would be awesome, but we may not get there, but I think we're going to get a pretty quick car. So thanks for watching and have a great week. See ya.